What's up guys, and welcome back to the Audi R8, one of my favorite sub $100,000 supercar slash sports cars, depending on where you sit in that argument. This example is owned by my friend Yue. I've driven many of his cars, including his old 750S, GT4 RS, 991 and 992 GT3s. But I think it's really interesting that he now has this much more affordable first-gen R8 V8. I think that says a lot about this car as a driving experience and as an ownership experience. When this car came out back in 2007, it really put other manufacturers on notice, especially Porsche. You got to remember, the 997 was still the latest and greatest Porsche 911 generation at that time. And from where I'm sitting, and even from just looking at it from the exterior, this has far more road presence than any 997, even the GT3. But what actually makes this car so special to drive? That's the question I'm going to answer today. As you can see, this is a gated manual V8 R8, most affordable trim R8 that you could buy at the time. And even nowadays, you can pick these up for only $60,000 to $80,000 here in the US. For that money, you get a naturally aspirated 4.2 liter V8. It's a 32 valve dual overhead cam. It makes 420 horsepower, 317 pound-feet of torque, direct injection, and this is basically a dry sump version of the V8 found in the B7 generation Audi RS4. Some reviewers criticize this for being a little underpowered compared to other supercars. Do not let the numbers fool you. This is an incredibly fun to drive and capable sports car. You can get this with a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed automated manual called the R-Tronic. I have not driven an R-Tronic. Needless to say, the 6-speed gated manual is the one you want. You could also get an R8 with a V10, and in the first generation, that gave you about 100 more horsepower, but also weighed about 100 pounds more. Those cars also go for over $100,000 still. I drove a V10 manual Spyder and was not a big fan. The throttle response was a little bit too sensitive for my liking, and I think the extra weight of the V10 plus the chassis rigidity reduction of the Spyder really limited the driving dynamics of that car. Interestingly, the first gen R8 also shares some basic chassis components with the Lamborghini Gallardo. Volkswagen Audi Group at that time already owned Lamborghini, and they thought to save development costs by developing the R8 and Gallardo on the same basic platform. This has quattro all-wheel drive. It can send up to 70% of the power to the rear axle, hydraulic steering, double wishbone suspension front and rear. Now this car came with magneto rheological dampers as standard, but the previous owner actually fitted on some cheap budget coilovers. I don't know what brand they are. This car should weigh in the 3,600 pound range. This is an aluminum space frame monocoque chassis. Base MSRP was actually around $114,000. So the fact that you can actually get these for about half that today means they haven't depreciated a ton for this age of vehicle. Now this also has an aftermarket exhaust. Interior quality is excellent. I really like the build quality of Audi interiors from this era. Physical buttons for everything. Of course, the gated manual feels amazing. A single block of metal for the gates here, the shifter base, and the shift knob itself. So satisfying. Manual handbrake, a rather large diameter steering wheel. Do have the check tire pressure warning on, but I checked the tire pressures earlier and we are good. We're just on a Pirelli P0 tire, nothing too crazy. One thing I do notice about driving this car at low speed is that the steering, this hydraulic rack, is actually quite heavy and it has a slow ratio. So it is a little bit of a workout. Wow. Yeah, this gated manual takes a little bit of getting used to. You can actually run into them. Now, one thing I'm noticing that I'm not a big fan of is these brakes. The top half of the pedal travel, not much happens, and then the brakes suddenly bite, so it's not easy to modulate. It's a very Audi feeling brake pedal, if that makes sense. 8250 RPM redline. This engine sounds so exotic, so good. It has that high-pitched tone that you expect from a supercar, but at the same time it blends that almost rough V8 growl. It's almost like a mix between a pony car and a supercar. Oh yeah, these downshifts, when you do get them right, very satisfying. You hear that clink clink of the gated shifter. The upshifts with this car, around town especially, when you're not really pushing it, are tricky because this flywheel is very light. The downshift's not a problem because you can just blip it harder, but on the upshift you are limited by how quickly the revs fall. So you have to shift really quickly. What an engine, my goodness. One of the best sounding V8s I think ever. Now despite this being all-wheel drive and weighing around 3,600 pounds, it actually feels surprisingly nimble in the tighter sections of the road. This Quattro all-wheel drive system does feel really good. It's very anti-Audi from the era. Rear biased. It actually feels a bit lively. You can get little bits of power oversteer on throttle. But yeah, this brake pedal not inspiring a ton of confidence. Virtually no initial bite. As I mentioned, this has some unknown brand of coilovers and they are not great. They feel soft when you drive the car quickly. Over the bumps, they feel underdamped. But then around town at low speed or even on the highway, it feels quite harsh. I would have loved to drive this with stock suspension to really assess how this car does as a daily driven supercar. I will be doing another video later on assessing just how it is on an everyday basis. As many of you know, I recently bought an NC1 Acura NSX, and that is one of the staple everyday drivable supercars. It has been since the original in the early 90s. So I want to assess if this does just as good of a job for a lot less money. NC1 on average costs $120 to $150. R8 V8 first gen costs $60 to $80. So maybe just over half the price on average. Ooh, overblip that one, wow. I actually wish this car's flywheel was like maybe 15-20% heavier. I know that sounds like heresy, but it would add a level of predictability to the throttle response that right now I think it's just slightly lacking, and it would make daily driving this car a bit easier. Okay, ran into the gate there on the 2 to 3 shift. Wow, what a car. I actually really enjoy this in the canyons. I expected it to feel a bit heavy, a bit cumbersome, and held back by these aftermarket dampers, but actually I was able to get into a groove with this car quicker than I expected. It's a shame that the R8 is now discontinued. I will say the second gen R8, I've driven one of those, I prefer this by far. It has more feedback, it feels a little bit more nimble, it looks way better, especially the front and rear lights. And I mean, listen to this. It's just the right amount of power. I don't think this really needs more than 420 horsepower. It's a usable amount of power where it doesn't feel slow, but at the same time you can use it on a canyon road and enjoy it. I just hopped out of a GT4 RS, and that has about 80 more horsepower while weighing a few hundred pounds less, and that actually felt overpowered for this road. This R8 can be enjoyed on a daily basis, in the canyons, on the track. It's really just a phenomenal all-around entry-level supercar, and it's drop-dead gorgeous. I mean, even by modern standards, this is just such a timeless design, and for the money, come on. It's so hard to argue with. if you can find one. I mean, I found one yesterday because I was looking for some reason for $68,000. It had like maybe 30,000 miles, basically stock. For that kind of money, what offers a better balance of road presence, comfort, specialness, and just that amazing driving dynamics that you expect from a proper supercar or sports car if you're a hater? But let me know what you think about the first gen R8. For this kind of money, what would you rather have? A big shout out to Yue. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.